you need to focus on improving your oxygen uptake to become a faster runner? Or can you get faster without improving your oxygen uptake? And to make this the shortest video in YouTube history, or at least in my history as a YouTube creator, here is the answer directly to the question: do you need to improve your oxygen uptake to become a faster runner, or can you get faster without improving your oxygen uptake? The answer is yes. My name is Fredrik Zillén and I'm your running technique specialist today with a little bit of a bad throat because I had a cold, and I have done about 10,000 tests of runners' efficiency with my 3D cameras over the past 10 years and helped thousands of other runners to run more efficiently so they can run faster and longer with less risk of injury. And if you were confused by my answer, yes, it is because both things can be true. You are likely to get faster from a higher oxygen uptake, but you can also get faster without increasing your oxygen uptake. I'll explain what I mean so you know how to think about your training so you can improve your performance. But before I do that, I just want to say that those who have bought my online course up until now have had access to it for 1 year after the day they bought it. This has been my attempt to minimize the risk of it spreading after a while to people who haven't paid for it. But I have now changed that. From now on, there is a lifetime access to the course if you buy it. And if you already have bought it and also want to have lifetime access, even though you bought it like 2 years ago or last week, I can of course fix that. Just send an email to lifetime@fredrikzillén.se. Not com, lifetime@fredrikzillén.se. And I will fix it as soon as I can, depending on how many emails I receive from the thousands who have bought the course. But I will do my best. As usual, you can find more information about the course in the description below. But now back to what determines how good a runner you are and the role of oxygen uptake in this. How fast you run is largely determined by 3 things. Your maximum oxygen uptake, also known as VO2max. Number 2, your utilization rate, that is how close to your maximum you can work for an extended period of time, like your lactate threshold. And number 3, your work economy, that is how efficiently you move, which is both external factors like your running technique and how it works on the inside of your body, like how efficient your body is at producing the power needed to run. If you want to be a good long-distance runner, it's good to have a high oxygen uptake, a high VO2max. This is how much oxygen your body can absorb and use as fuel during physical activity. It also means that your oxygen uptake isn't as important if you are running 100 meters, as oxygen isn't involved in the process at all, like when running long distances. And at distances such as 200 miles, VO2max is also not completely crucial. At least not if it's good enough if you don't win the race, but end up in the middle of the pack, and mostly just trying to survive the 200 miles. So what determines your oxygen uptake? Well, the bad news is that it, among other things, determined by your genes. Some people are born with genes that give them higher oxygen uptake, although of course it's usually a combination of the right genes and training that gives some people very high values. So congratulations to you who choose parents with Olympic medals in endurance sports. Of course, there are also people on the other side of the scale who are not at all predisposed to have a high VO2max. You've chosen the wrong parents, like my kids. But everyone can work on improving oxygen uptake. And when your oxygen uptake gets higher, you will perform better as a runner. It's as simple as that. And a little later in this video, we'll get examples of how to improve it in a pretty simple way. However, although high oxygen uptake is highly correlated with performance in sports such as running and cycling, cross-country skiing and rowing, it is not the whole story. It says a lot if you are comparing people in big populations, for instance. Those who run 10k in 30 minutes are most likely to have a higher VO2max than those who do it in 50 minutes. However, if you look at a more narrow segment, such as the best in a sport, the correlation decreases. There are other factors, including work efficiency, that determines this. Let's take an example. You see, as I understand it, Paula Radcliffe had the same oxygen uptake test value 70 milliliter per minute per kilo in 1991, when she was 17 years old, as when she broke the world record in the marathon in 2003, a world record that stood the time for 16 years. Her VO2max didn't improve during all those years, but her efficiency improved by 15%. And when Nike made its first attempt to get a runner to run a marathon under 2 hours, the one done at the Monza track in 2017, the one called Breaking 2, where Eliud Kipchoge came the closest as he ran in 2 hours and 25 seconds. They gathered 16 runners who were selected for the final tests before 3 people were finally selected to stand on the starting line. Nike then released some of their test results, although they didn't say which runner that had which test results. But for the test value for the 16 runners in terms of VO2max, they ranged between 62 and 84 milliliters per kilo per minute. 84 is of course crazy good. But 62? Sure, it's good, but it's not that uncommon for recreational runners that run a bit more and are about the same age as the runners in the Nike project to be close to 62 or even slightly more. For example, there is a good chance that people will post comments into this video telling you that they have 62 or more, but are still extremely far from making it Nike's elite team. But still, 62 was good enough to be part of the group of 16 runners selected for the Breaking 2 project. I'll say it again. Working on improving your oxygen uptake is something you should ideally do if you want to become a faster runner. And the higher the test value, the better. But for Paula Radcliffe and the results from the runners in Breaking 2, you can see that you can get very good even if it doesn't improve that much over time, provided it's high enough from the start, of course, and that the test value of 62 was actually good enough to train with Eliud Kipchoge. And here is the best way for you to improve your VO2max. It's not exactly rocket science, and you've probably already guessed it. Intervals. Really tough intervals. The optimal interval time for VO2max is 3 to 7 minutes. The shorter the time, the more repetitions you can do. The idea is to get your heart rate up really high, when your watch says you have entered the red zone. One session that is good for this is what we in Sweden call Norwegian Force. The name comes from the fact that the Norwegian national cross-country skiing team, who are the absolute best in the world, started doing this, which soon spread to other national cross-country skiing teams in the world and also to running and other sports. You start with a proper warm-up and then some fast strides before you start the actual workout. Otherwise, it will take too long to get your heart rate up to zone 5. Then you run 4 times 4 minutes. Hence the name Norwegian Force, which means 4 4-minute intervals. In between the 4-minute intervals, you jog for 3 minutes. Don't walk. Jogging with the heart rate at about 70% of your maximum heart rate. And you do this 4 times. 4 minutes hard, 3 minutes jog, 4 4 times. If you have not run intervals before, it may be sufficient to run them once every 2 weeks. Otherwise, intervals are good to do at least once a week. If you are a really good runner, you can also do them 2 or maybe even 3 times a week. But only once will go a long way. I will cover how you improve the efficiency in your work economy and utilization rate in other videos. Or maybe I have already done it by the time you see this. What do I know? Well, I know one thing. Here comes words of wisdom for runners, and see you in another video.